Hey everybody, welcome to Houston with a Problem. Quick little, I got like an hour tonight. I can chit chat with everybody. So let's do it. Let's talk the week. Well, welcome to Houston land, where it's always my birthday. Okay, let's see what you got going on here. Yeah, so metamaterial ends up on the threshold list. There is, some ridiculous amount of FTDs that are going unresolved with it, and it's was reported by Ortex to be 150% short. So I think we're looking at the T35 on that, sort of like what happened with Newegg. Newegg had a merger, and none of us really paying attention. Then all of a sudden, that stock price went to $77. So I think we're kind of looking at that range for metamaterials. It's not a good idea to short companies that have a lot of cash and are getting buy offers. So I think those guys are going to be just fine. I'm still sitting on my shares and waiting. And then as far as everything else, the AMC got taken off the short threshold list because they reset everything. They did debt swap with the FTDs and reassigned ownership, which meant everything reset. Charlie's Vids has had a few videos about ETFs and swaps recently, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around them. Oh, it's shirt close-up. There's a shirt close-up for you. It's tiny little flowers, little itty bitty like carnations or something on there. Sometimes he explains things so amazingly, and other times it's like so quick that it takes me a long time to figure out what he's talking about. And I may need some help even on some of the ETFs he's showing. He had an ETF that I guess was a small cap ETF that he found that was full of GameStop that they're using to basically pump and dump GameStop. And BlackRock was using. So I'm still trying to figure out a lot of stuff that are going on with that. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to the chat here and see what everyone's got going on. Kazuma, did you read Glass DD? What are your thoughts? Oh man, I have not read it yet. Someone sent it to me, and I've not had a chance to read it yet. So I need to actually read that more, because people are like, hey Houston, read this and explain it to me. And Glass DD, it's like Glass Dome or something, what it's called. Yeah, so I need to read that. Kazuma, Kuzma. And yeah, so that's on the list. I haven't had too much chance. I had a lot of school stuff this week, so trying to get done what I can when I can. Okay. Yeah, there always seems to be a lot of mod drama going on. This is Cody. He's talking about there's a lot of mod drama on Super Stonk, and I guess there's a migration going to GME Jungle. That's what he's saying. Man, the short hedge funds, I think, can get their way in, weasel their way into these mods somehow, but also there's people are just prone to drama, dude, and I really don't know. I mean, it's what's keeping them interested and keeping them going here. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where we are. Blue Hefner wants to know what happened with GME. GME's been getting naked shorted like crazy. They went on the hard to borrow list, so there really aren't much shares available to borrow to legitimately sell GME. So what they did was they naked sold millions of shares, and they're hoping that will cause us to sell a whole bunch, and that those shares will finally show up and they can, close out those positions. I think they're trying to build quick cash by dumping GME and getting us to panic and sell, but we're not panicking and selling. So yeah. Yeah, no, they did not announce a crypto dividend this week. They didn't announce anything. That came and went without any news happening. on the 14th. Everyone got their hopes up. And what are you doing, Ryan Cohen? What's happening? Like, let us know. Let us know what's going on. It may have just been like a test minting of the coin. Yeah, so that's interesting. Why we didn't really get anything out of the crypto dividend birthing on Wednesday at 4:20 a.m. Jason, hey Houston, what do you think of the Ape family hiring Wes Christian? Possible outcomes? That is interesting because somebody posted my response to David Lauer tweet where it was obvious a guy who had badmouthed Citadel for all the shitty things Citadel does on LinkedIn got some sort of cease and desist and correct yourself, and he tweeted this, or he sent this, posted this message that was like, I am so sorry, I have no proof the Citadel does all these bad things. And I had said, you know what, dude, let him sue you. Like, because Discovery is a two-way street, and if they sue one of us, we can ask for every teeny tiny little document we want. And we've got 500,000 people on Superstonk alone that can crunch all that data and go through all those documents for us. So the legal team is basically infinitely large at this point. It would be a gigantic mistake for Citadel to try and sue somebody over what they're saying about how Citadel is, well, let's face it, a shady market maker and shady hedge fund. They're manipulating stock prices. They're manipulating the market. They're dumping naked shorts into the market via their market maker status, basically abusing their role as a market maker to dictate the prices of things. They're hiding transactions in the dark pools, so they're not being listed and influencing the price on the exchange. And, you know, whatever. I don't think people should be scared of Citadel and their lawyers at this point, because there are a lot of lawyers that are on our side and would gladly rally to the cause. Plus a whole bunch of PhDs, a whole bunch of mathematicians, a whole bunch of accountants, a whole bunch of people that would gladly volunteer their time, because they're already doing it anyway, to fight for the cause. Although the lawsuit, Wes Christian and what was the guy's name? It's like Craig or Chris or Curtis or something like that. They're talking about suing GME and AMC. I didn't really understand where they're going with that and what their hope is with that suit. Is that suit to like force them to do share recalls or something? I don't know. I would rather see lawsuits against the market makers, the short hedge funds, and the DTCC at this point. There needs to be a lawsuit eventually that forces the DTCC to open up the books of that central computer where all those electronic trades are made, and so that we can take a peek inside and know just what the hell is going on and why is it so easy for them to just flood the market with these naked shorts. Chris Taylor, Houston, great shirt as always. Any news on Sears Holding, down 16% with heavy volume? Yeah, I tried to actually pick up some more Sears Holding, and Fidelity wouldn't let me. So I transferred some more money into my Schwab account, and perhaps they'll let me pick up some Sears Holding. Because as far as I know, Sears hasn't lost any of their assets, because they're still being held in that bankruptcy, but their debts are lower than the amount of assets they have. So I expect some sort of payoff. Get It Got is the person to turn to on that, and I'll have to ask and see if he's, or just look up user Get It Got on Reddit and see if he's posted anything recently about Sears Holding. He seems to be the go-to person on that. But you know, it's been floating around like 22 to 27 cents in that area, just kind of bouncing up and down while it's in this pink sheet limbo. Yeah, I don't know why they'd be getting hit so hard, other than trying to drive it down to zero now. Maybe that. PB, thought on COVID, Delta variant, and AMC, please. Yes. So the Delta variant is the variant that came out of India, and it's the dominant one in the United States now. It's the dominant one in UK. It's the dominant one in Indonesia. Indonesia actually surpassed India in number of infections today, and their hospitals are chock full, and they're having death rates like they never had over the previous year. In the United States, we're actually back on the rise. In Arkansas, their ICUs are full at the moment. I have a feeling that the Midwestern and Southeastern states that are full of vaccine hesitant people that haven't gotten vaccinated are going to be hit the hardest. What it looks like is people who are vaccinated can still get the virus in them and pass it on as an unwitting source of transmission until the immune system kicks in and knocks it out. And they think that the number of vaccinated people mixing with unvaccinated people is causing the unvaccinated people to get infected at higher rates than they would have normally if it was just unvaccinated people hanging out together. Because as it was with the virus before, the majority of infections are from those who don't show symptoms. This is a very weird virus in that you can infect other people when you're not showing symptoms. And when people show symptoms, usually the symptoms hit really hard and they don't go anywhere, so they're not actually actively infecting people. So something like 60 or 70% of all infections were from people who weren't showing symptoms, were asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. The Delta variant seems to be stopped mostly by the mRNA vaccines. Those are the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. If you have Johnson & Johnson or AstraZeneca, it doesn't seem to be doing, those don't seem to be doing the job. The one I think to watch out for is the Lambda variant, which is coming out of, I believe it's Peru. And that one, the spike protein has evolved and mutated, and the mRNA vaccines aren't really recognizing it. And that might be the one that could potentially hit us pretty hard come fall if there isn't a booster shot of some kind. But the big problem with the Delta variant is that it's hitting younger people harder than the previous versions. And that means young kids under 12 who aren't old enough to get a vaccine yet, and they're back at school, they're back at summer camp, they're doing these things, is that they might be hit really hard with that. And so, you know, without perhaps a booster shot or getting more Americans vaccinated, we might have a bad fall. May be like stuck shutting down again, which, I mean, business-wise for AMC means people won't be going to the movies in the fall. On the plus side, if the economy contracts as a result of shutting down due to the pandemic once more, then that probably is good news for the meme stocks that will see possible margin calls if the Dow takes a dump. So that's, you know, people die, that sucks, but we make a lot of money. So that's kind of where we are right now. So yeah, PB, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm really interested to see where and who and why and how this Delta variant or the Lambda variant or those other ones come crashing through. This is from Preston Becker. Houston, huge fan, love your show. How do you sleep at night, knowing you'd be washed away due to that sketch fault line you live on? So, let's see here. I'm on Bainbridge Island. The Seattle Fault runs through the south end of the island, and it goes basically from the Olympic Mountains under the Puget Sound east and goes underneath like the football stadium in Seattle and then out to the Cascade Range. And that is, what, probably 6-7 miles south of me is that fault line. And it's a surface fault. So you can actually see the fault at the surface. And there's really cool LiDAR maps you can see of like the escarpment from the fault. And the last time it had an earthquake, a decent one, was about 900 years ago. And it uplifted the entire south end of the island about 30 feet out of the water. So there's all these like, excuse me, all these fossilized shells and stuff that are on the south end of the island. And that's where the super duper really, really rich people live. They live in this like co-op community golf course thing, and all the homes are like $10-15 million. And that earthquake could like shoot them 60 feet in the air, drop them 30 feet in the ocean. they don't know. But that earthquake generated gigantic landslides and tsunamis all throughout the Puget Sound region. And there was a landslide where the clay on the hill, I think around Newcastle and Bellevue, just sort of slipped and knocked an entire forest into the lake. And in Lake Washington, they had a 500-foot tsunami, mega tsunami, kick off from that. And about 600 feet down in the bottom of the lake, they actually found the trees still standing upright because it's a pretty low oxygen area, and the trees get petrified, sort of turned into soap, basically. And all the trees are still standing upright at the bottom of Lake Washington. And after 900 years, it's pretty awesome. So we got that fault. That could go. But there's a whole bunch of other faults that like to kick off around here. And then there's the subduction zone off on the coast. But I think the Seattle fault would actually do more damage to Seattle than the subduction zone would, which is a few hundred miles away. Even though that earthquake would probably last like 5 to 15 minutes and be a 9.0 or larger and make tsunamis that would wipe out Japan and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, there's your local geology lesson about the Seattle area. Okay. Just another Ubermensch. Why wouldn't hedgies pay news to cause more shutdowns with Orona lies? Because the hedgies don't want shutdowns. They want the economy kicking because they want their assets under management to stay solid. If there's shutdowns, the assets under management shrink because the Dow collapses, and then they're open to margin calls. So the hedgies need the economy to keep kicking. Okay. Chris Taylor says you can't let the Greenland ice sheet slippage nightmares out of my head. Yeah, it's well, you know, we're looking at stuff. I got sent the link about the moon wobble that everyone was all freaking out about. It's not the moon. The moon does an 18-year cycle where it the orbit kind of wobbles back and forth across the equator of the Earth as it goes around. So just imagine it's like a top kind of wobbling as it goes around the Earth. And it can trigger slightly higher and slightly lower tides at high tide and low tide as a result of where above the Earth's surface it is at the time. It's not the moon that's the problem. It's the fact that ocean levels are rising at 3.3 to 3.4 millimeters per year, which is about 2 to 3 times the rate the oceans were rising 25 years ago. Basically, we're getting runaway melting of land ice, and that's causing ocean levels to rise at an ever-increasing rates. So, you know, someone can do the integral and figure out what that means for another 25 years from now, but it probably means we'll be seeing ocean levels rise probably close to a centimeter a year in the next 25 years. That's pretty gnarly. That's that starts to make some big differences because there's a lot of areas, especially equatorial areas, where they don't have as much tide swing, that can see coastal flooding more consistently as a result of that. Okay. This is Matt Everts. No questions on my end. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's having a good Friday. Yeah, I'm going to go have dinner with my sister at 6 because she's heading back to LA. So I only have an hour here to chit chat with everyone, but hopefully have a nice Friday for everybody. Okay. Aaron Pauling says, I cannot believe you trust the media on the Vax BS, but you don't trust them on GME. It has nothing to do with the media. It has to do with the fact that I'm a scientist and I can read academic journals and figure out what's going on with these things. I can read data myself and do that just fine. The media has nothing to do with the virus. Here's the thing about viruses, especially novel viruses to which we have no natural immunity. They don't care about marketing. They don't care about strategy. They don't care about how tough you are, how strong you are, how mentally prepared you are. They'll just do their thing. And their thing is to attach to your ACE2 receptors and use those receptors to replicate themselves and make more of themselves. And, you know, you'll have probably 1 trillion generations of a virus in your system as you're infected. And each one of those trillions and trillions and trillions of little bits of RNA that is the virus has higher odds of mutating the more people they're inside of. And so we saw The B117 variant that came out of Bristol, England, was the result of all the adults staying home and sending their kids to school. So the virus mutated inside of school children because those are the ones that were being affected the most, and it maximized the infection rates inside of children. And then when it spread, it hit kids harder than it hit everybody else. So, you know, if we put evolutionary structures, you know, these survival of the fittest structures and constraints on these viruses, they'll mutate. That's just what they do. You know, if human beings had the ability to make trillions of generations of ourselves in a matter of days, we would have all sorts of freaky mutations also. But because it takes 20 years to create a generation, the rate of mutation is a lot lower in humans than it is in something like a virus or a bacteria. So, you know, the fact that there's, you know, what, four endemic cold viruses out there, and Corona, the COVID-19 will probably be the 5th endemic cold virus, means that in our past, human beings went through pandemics like this, where coronavirus wiped out huge swaths of the population. And, you know, it reduced the population, reduced our immunity to things, and eventually after the 3rd or 4th infection, our immune system started to recognize the possible variants, and so now we just get sneezes and colds. Same thing happened with the flu virus. There's a reason why the cold and flu wiped out 90% of the indigenous peoples in the Americas and the Polynesians, because they had no exposure to these viruses. They had no innate antibodies, no relics in their past that had dealt with these. And so, you know, the easiest way for the Europeans to conquer the West was the fact that they just brought their disease with them that they were immune to. And, you know, these folks getting colds and flus killed them, killed 90% of them. So, you know, what we're experiencing now is a very mild version of that with this novel virus. And you just can't will it away, man. Go get vaccinated. Get vaccinated, not simply for yourself, but for those around you. You know, we have to think of each other. That's our entire goal in society, is to think of each other and to do what's best for helping everybody. And I know I've got some people that are vaccine hesitant that pop on here, and you're not helping. I'll be honest, you're not. You're not helping society. You're not helping the economy. You're not helping each other. You're not helping your friends and family. You're hurting everybody as a result, and you're believing a bunch of lies that have been basically mass produced by just 12 people. And this vaccine hesitancy, you know, is propaganda, and there's no science behind it. You know, you can have, if you get infected with the virus, right, and you're not vaccinated, you have a 2 to 3% chance of dying, a 30% chance of permanent organ damage, and a 10% chance of hospitalization. What they're finding is that over 30% of Division I athletes, like the healthiest, youngest people in America that do nothing but eat healthy food and work out constantly, over 30% of them have permanent heart damage from getting infected by the coronavirus, whether they showed symptoms or not. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia found that 100% of children infected with coronavirus showed evidence of blood vessel damage and blood clots. The excess deaths in young people have skyrocketed in the last year. It's because a lot of them aren't dying from COVID, from being put on intubator and having lung issues. They're dying from cytokine storms of their immune system overreacting, giving them blood clots, and they're having strokes, heart attacks, and aneurysms at rates we've never seen before. So, you know, I had 2 friends under 40 drop dead from heart attacks in the last year, and it was tied directly to a COVID infection. My friend's dad had just finished surviving cancer after a 4-year battle, and a month later got COVID and had a stroke and died from it. My roommate's friend, a younger guy, he's in his 40s, got COVID at Christmas time, had a hell of a time, was hospitalized, and then a month later had to go through 8 surgeries because he had 1,000 blood clots in his body. You don't get these when you have the cold or flu. The amount of damage this virus is doing to people long term is absolutely bonkers. And we have no idea, because it's a novel virus, what that means for years down the road. I mean, if you get the chicken pox when you're a kid, you might get shingles 40 or 50 years later. If you get mononucleosis in college, that gives you a higher chance of having multiple sclerosis 30 or 40 years down the line. So, you know, we have to treat these novel infectious diseases like the fact we don't know what they're going to do or what they're going to evolve into. And had the United States back in March or April of last year just shut down for 2 weeks and had the National Guard hand out MREs, we could have squashed this thing then, like Australia or New Zealand. But instead, everyone's like, no, we can't close the economy. Instead, we spent $16 trillion trying to save the economy that was getting destroyed by the virus anyway. So, be prudent. We have to be proactive and, think about each other, help each other. Do what, if helping each other means stay 6 feet away and wear a mask, do that, man. And sorry, I got on a rant there. But let's see here. Okay. KD. Oh, they're in Anacortes. Oh, thank you. Go visit San Juan's. Yeah, the Anacortes is awesome, and San Juan's are beautiful. I haven't been up there in years, but I want to go. As a kid, I used to go in the summer times. I did the summer camp, and we'd kayak around the San Juans, and it was like the best fun ever. Just be really stinky teenagers kayaking for days on end. Shimmer. Oh, thank you. Yeah, stick with the science. There you go. Thank you, Shimmer. And nah, mate. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. At least a few people are picking up what I'm laying down. And Susie Chi, thank you. All right. Yeah, I first came to prominence in the eyes of people on Twitter last year because in January I was doing basically statistical analysis and projections for what was going to happen with the COVID vaccine or the COVID-19. And I was saying, hey, by this date we should expect this many people. This date we should expect this many. If we don't do any mitigations, we should be expecting 50,000 people a day in America dying from COVID. Had we done no mitigation efforts, we'd have had 100 million infected by June of last year and like 2.5 million dead. And because we did mitigation efforts and we were able to retract from society, that saved a lot of lives. I mean, we only have 1 million open hospital beds at best in the United States of America. And if you're looking at, several million people getting infected a day and 10 to 20% of those need hospitalization, then we run out of hospital beds and the death rate just shoots through the roof if they don't have access to hospital beds. And so in places where they saw super hot spots, like in New York last March and April, they ran out of hospital beds. And that was, 10% fatality rate. Same thing in Michigan about that time. And so, keep those hospital beds open, do what you can. And hopefully, we'll get boosters of the vaccine and we can go back to normal life full time at some point. Thank you, John Robinson. Thank you. Okay. Oh man, whole bunch of chats going on here. I got talking and I'm missing them. Chad Brewer, that was the name. Thank you, Frank Nava. That was who's talking about the lawsuit. So yeah, so Chad Brewer is looking to sue AMC and GameStop. I don't understand what. I'll have to look at the interview. Let me put that on the list. Chad Brewer interview. Chad Brewer interview. My greatest weakness is remembering names. So I'm like, it starts with a C, but I can't remember what it is. Chuck, Chaz, I don't know. That's what I will never be a successful politician because I can't remember people's names to save my life. Okay. This is from Euphoria Morning. Hi, Houston. So AMC and GME, what's your thoughts on the shift in hedgies tactics to defeat us apes? Are they normalizing the momentum a lot more now, do you think? Slow and boring action? I'm wondering if they're shifting tactics finally. They might be pumping the stock up, shorting like crazy, driving it down, pumping it up again, shorting like crazy, driving it down. And that might be how they kind of, I would hope that they kind of close out positions. But I don't think they're closing out positions. I think they're just generating more cash again and again when they do this. So you know, if they're closing positions, we'd see the price go up consistently, but they're not closing positions. I just think that all they do is kick the can down the road. They just pass the buck and move on. Yeah. So, I don't know if their strategy is actually to be done with this or to make as much cash off it they can while they can. That makes sense. I don't know. I'm not seeing too much in the way of closing on this stuff. I just see more and more shorting, especially since it's on the hard to borrow list at that. Okay. Ethan Green. Oh yeah, come to visit. Yeah, people hop on the ferry all the time from Seattle and come to Bainbridge and walk around, and they ask me, so what's there doing on the island? I'm like, do you have a car? They say no, and I say, you're doing it. We're a pretty sleepy town, not the most exciting place in the world, but it's a beautiful, beautiful place. The trees are huge, the ferry boats are beautiful, the mountains there, out in the open. Okay. All right. Okay. Andrew Stewart asks, after a default on a margin call and liquidation, can open short positions be purchased without covering? Are you talking about like as someone buying the debt of those open short positions? Or are you talking about someone bidding on assets but not being responsible? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, Andrew. I'm gonna have to reword that for me. So ideally what happens if there's a default on margin call and there's liquidation, that money from the liquidation can come from either a large financial institution making a bid on those assets and be like, hey, I'll buy all those assets for $20 billion. And then the brokerage or the clearinghouse, whoever is in charge of that liquidation, goes, okay, you're the winning bidder, you get all these assets, and they use that cash to start closing those positions. Now, the DTCC may have the ability, because I'm not sure, because no one really knows how their computers work, may have the ability to immediately identify who has synthetics out there and might be able to purchase those and close those positions that way. Is that what you're asking? That could be very possible. They could be like, hey, you know, you have 1 million synthetic shares in your broker, in your account. We will pay you to close those positions and be done with it. That might be a possibility, but I think a lot of those people with those big synthetics, due to lending out, institutional lending, might want the shares because the shares would be worth so much money. So that's where it might be. Hey, Chunky Dog. Hey, I know you like to chew on your bone when I'm doing my show, but come on, come on. Sorry, the bone chewing. Pay attention to me, dude. I will. I'll pet your head. How about that? Okay. Thoughts on the SIC not being changed on metamaterials to allow it to continue to trade as Torch? I thought the QSIP and everything had already changed and had gone back to metamaterial. So are there some, this is from Jelani, are there some folks still able to trade Torchlight? All mine got converted to metamaterial, so I don't see Torchlight if I search for it. But yeah, okay, all right. That'd be interesting. I'll have to look that up and see if there's any Torchlight still bouncing around out there. Yeah. Okay. Looking for questions here. This is from Smart Events Investor. Hey Houston, is GME still going to issue an NFT? I didn't hear anything special from July 14th. Yeah, I didn't hear anything special at all. It just kind of came and went. My guess is that possibly one of two things. One, it was an experimental coin they minted, and it did whatever it is that they programmed it to do, and then went, okay, that's viable. Or two, they may have minted all the coins they need to, and now we're just sitting and waiting to figure out how they're going to implement it. The teams that they've hired to work on the NFT are like big time, big deal people, and I have no doubt that they're working on something that's a lot more complicated than just issuing a single coin. That coin probably has multiple layers inside of it to work as a blockchain to keep track of stock purchases, ownership, and weird things like that. I think it's a lot more inventive and creative than even anything that you or I can think of at this point. Yeah. Holta asks, do you think the tsunami in Interstellar is realistic? That part was realistic. If you have big tides as a result of tidal interaction between two gravitational bodies, the waves that are generated, or the tidal wave that's generated from that, can be gigantic. The big problem was that, it's a star system that's a black hole. And that black hole has planets that orbit around it and moons that go around those planets. Now, as you approach a black hole, there's time dilation. As you accelerate faster and faster, closer to the black hole, time slows down for those closer to the black hole. The planet that orbits, right, may see slight time dilation depending on what side of the planet you're on. And if you're orbiting that planet, depending on what side of the planet you're on, you may also see time dilation. But because you're orbiting that planet, it's going to equal out in the end, because you'll have stretch time and dilated time, stretch time and dilated time, and on whichever side of the planet you're on, so it'll even out in the end. And so the fact that they had the people they put down on the planet who experienced the tidal wave were experiencing time much slower than the person who was orbiting by a factor of several magnitudes. I mean, it was like 25 years for the 40 minutes that people were on the surface. That's not how it would work. I mean, if you were that close to a black hole and you're experiencing time dilation like that, the tidal forces between your head and feet would just stretch you into spaghetti anyway. But if there were strong tidal forces based on a moon or something else that was close to that planet, ocean planet, the waves that be generated would be gigantic. So when our moon formed, so this Mars-sized planetoid smacked into the Earth, splattered a bunch of stuff out into space, and formed our moon. The moon was really close to the Earth's surface, maybe only a couple thousand miles away. And the Earth itself was a molten ball of goo, just a big giant lava ball, like a water droplet of lava. These two bodies flying around probably resulted in, let's face it, tides of lava. And as the moon drifted further away, the Earth began outpouring gases, and the surface solidified, and we got an atmosphere, and water, was able to condense and rain, and we had oceans. If the moon was like 1/100th the distance it is now, meaning it's 2,000 miles above the Earth's surface, we would probably have 10,000-foot tides that would just sanitize the entire surface of the Earth. I mean, in that environment, maybe bacteria and microbes could exist, but everything else would just be pounded to snot. So there probably are other instances throughout our galaxy where there's huge tides as a result of interactions with moons or other stars. So yeah, that part was realistic. All right. I like to take 10 minutes to explain a yes or no question. Just in my head. Have you heard the rumor about an ape buyout? How would a facilitated payout for our shares even be organized, and what price? I think the only way that could happen is if the government stepped in and said, all right, we're going to stop trading. If you want to sell your shares, you've got 30 days at this price to agree to do it. I'm not sure how else they would be able to facilitate a payout otherwise. When the weak metamaterial is about to merge with Torchlight officially, some investment bank that had a whole bunch of hedge funds that were short on both those stocks offered $500 million to Metamaterial, and the CEO just laughed at him because his company all of a sudden was worth like $2 billion. So, you know, the investment bank knew that it could cause problems for the hedge funds, I think, that trade on margin to them. So like, hey, if we just buy this company for $500 million now, we can wipe out all those shares and be done with it. But George, I can't remember his last name, starts with a P, who's the CEO of Metamaterials, was like, no, you guys are screwed. And that's what he's been operating on ever since, I believe. So there may be some sort of, we may see like an offer from an investment bank to AMC, like, hey, we want to buy your company. But the hard part is that 85% of AMC is owned by retail investors. And none of them are going to go along with it unless the price to buy is absolutely insane. So, yeah, that's I see it's going to be hard for private equity to do that necessarily with that much stock owned by the public. Okay. Armando wants me to come to LA. I might be down there again this summer. I'm supposed to film a TV show. I did this pilot for a kids TV show back around Thanksgiving that was so fun. It's kind of like Kids Say the Darndest Things meet Drunk History. I don't know how to say it. But these kids get all hopped up on sugar. There's like 3 of them. And then myself and 2 other like know-it-all nerds, we go in front of them and explain some weird thing. Like the host, who's Buzzy Cohen, who's a Jeopardy grand champion, did some guest hosting for Jeopardy this past spring. Buzzy was the host of the show, and he'd be like, okay, Houston Wade, explain to them how cell phones work. And I have a minute to explain as best I can how cell phones, antennas, networks, satellites, all those things work. And then the kids sit and they can each ask me one question, and then they like confer. And then Buzzy asks them like, how do cell phones work? Kids are like, magic. And they say goofy things. It was really fun. It was myself, Buzzy Cohen, another Jeopardy champion, and the woman who's the science advisor for all the Star Treks, who were like the experts on the show. Well, we did it for History Channel, and History Channel apparently liked it, but now wants to film like a longer version, like an hour-long version. So I may be heading down to LA to reprise my role as know-it-all again. It's fun. It's fun to like go to a studio and have people feed you. If you ever get the opportunity, it's fun. Do it. Okay. Jordan, not 45. Is it possible for brokers to differ from synthetic and real? To an extent, yes, because a lot of the, especially naked options, like someone sells 100 options naked and they exercised and they don't have them. What the brokerage will do is they'll borrow 100 shares from inside their own brokerage and give those to the other brokerage where the buyer is. And they'll put synthetics into their customers' shares. So in that case, they do know exactly where the synthetics are. But when it comes to trying to buy out this stuff, when the MOAS happens and the liquidations happen and they have to buy our shares to close these positions, they're going to have to buy them all, whether it's synthetic or not, because they're still going to need real shares to put into 2 accounts with synthetics, and they'll still need to buy synthetics to erase them from existence. So they're just going to be buying anything people sell at that point. I don't think it really matters who has what. They just need them all. Okay. Susie Chi, she's in Hollywood. Heck yeah. Oh man, Lebanese lunch in Hollywood? Heck yeah, I'll do that. So Susie's saying that next time I come to Hollywood and visit, she's going to take me to Lebanese lunch, and I will totally do that. Feed me, house me. This is the best part about tripping and falling into this YouTube gig, is that people are like, yeah, sleep on my couch. I'll send you food. I love that part. Oh, man. Fantastic Jess. Hi, Wade. I saw an idea on the Twitter space. AMC convertible bond to rid itself of all debt. I thought it could work with apes already so invested. Yeah, I read that. I can't remember if I read that last night or this morning. Somebody tagged me in it, and I think it's brilliant. You know, you make a convertible bond, you offer it to retail, you raise the 2 billion plus you need from retail. We will spend the money and buy those shares, or that debt. They'll get turned into shares, and it's a way of erasing debt, keeping retail happy, and then AMC can start doing the diabolical things they need to do to offer a dividend, because the state that they're registered in does not allow dividends without clearing debt first. So AMC needs to get rid of their debt to be allowed to do that. And you know, let's Adam Aaron. I don't think you watch my show, but if you do, yeah, that's a good idea. Make convertible bonds, get more shares to the apes, and clear your debt, and help that squeeze happen. Yeah. Okay. United, you're in New Zealand. Yeah, you got plenty of fault lines down there. After the quake you guys had a few years ago, I saw an awesome skateboard movie that someone did skateboarding off of all the faults in the earthquake zone there. That's awesome. A lot of these faults, they kind of come in one of two forms. There's like an abrupt cataclysmic fault that might uplift or see a big slip somewhere, and then there's ones that slowly creep. And if you ever make it to Hollister, California, the sidewalks are all like these weird snakes that go down the road, because the faults are slowly warping the sidewalks and moving everything around. And then there's a spot where there's a fault in downtown San Francisco, and the sidewalk got cleaved perfectly, and over the past, I don't know, 50 years, the sidewalk was slowly migrating each and every day. And the scientists at I think it's UCal Berkeley, the geology department there, was using that sidewalk to monitor like how much the fault had slipped over X amount of time. And then sometime in the last, like 2 years ago, the city works department went out and repaved the sidewalk, and all the scientists like, no, what are you doing? We've been collecting data on this for 50 years now. But yeah, it's cool stuff when you can like see that stuff move. And yeah, we haven't had too much creep movement out here because there's not much bedrock that's exposed in the Puget Sound area. It's mostly glacial till that's like thousands of feet thick. So it's really hard for those faults to really make it to the surface. There's that one little spot in the south end of Bainbridge, and that's kind of it. And that rock is conglomerate, so it's a whole bunch of glacial till and beach rock. They got pressed into basically a concrete and then turned sideways. And so that's why it sticks up and you can actually see it. Justin Lewis, when does the AMC margin call stop? After the computer begins buying shares in an escalating fashion, when does the action stop? I.e., if I set my sell price at $1 million a share, when do I get screwed? Well, the ways you would get screwed is, one, the price never gets to $1 million. And so it goes, you have your price up here, and it goes peak, and does that, then you're screwed. You can also get screwed if you set your price to $1 million and it's buy, and they close their position, and then the buying pressure is all gone. Those are pretty much the two ways that you get screwed on that. The buying computers, the way the DTC worded that memo that came out in May, was basically, we will buy anything and everything that's available until these positions will get closed. And that's them explaining like, hey, we know that a lot of you are planning on setting your prices really high, and if they happen to be set high and those are the only shares available at that time, we will be buying them. And as they clear out those different levels of the limit orders on their way up, so I mean there is a chance that it peaks higher, or there's a chance that there's a peak somewhere at $1 million and you make your money. But if it doesn't hit that, then then you're screwed and you're out and you missed the boat and the buy pressure's over and you want to sell, sell anything, it's on the way down, but there might not be any buy pressure left to take care of that. If we're lucky, we'll have sort of dips and valleys during that peak, and will last for days or weeks. And you might have you know, someone gets margin called, a bunch of forced buying, and the price rises, and then they cover some of that position, but they run out of money and there's still stuff owed, but the buy pressure drops off, and then they get forced liquidated, so the buy pressure goes back up, and then the forced liquidation runs out of money and it becomes the bank's responsibility. So it might be a day or two before the bank can start taking it, and then the bank starts buying, and it goes higher again. And the bank runs out of money, and now it's the insurance or the DTCC that has to do it. So then the buying computers go until they run out of money. Then the Federal Reserve kicks in money, and so we might see these dips and these peaks and valleys as the MOAS is going on, because it's the amount of cash that's going to be needed to close these positions is so astronomical. It might be really hard for us to gauge how fast it is for them to move money from one account to another to make the buying happen. And you know, they may have been thinking about this. They may have already been having meetings and like, okay, we've got a stash of cash ready for quantitative easing to just dump into these bank accounts when it's time. But that's more proactive than the government has ever been before. So, Mupulin, is it possible the squeeze will be slow and long like Tesla's was? Yeah, I mean that's the short's best hope, is that it's long and drawn out. One of the first, I haven't done too many recorded episodes. One of the first recorded episodes I did was basically saying like, best case scenario for the shorts is that they flatten that curve and they draw it out over a long period of time. But at the same time, they have to close positions, and they haven't done any closing of their positions at this point. All they've done is open more positions, more short positions. So, I don't know if they can draw it out forever, because eventually somebody's going to want their money, and they're gonna need their money, and they're gonna come to those shorts and say, hey, where's my money? And they're going to get it one way or another. So, yeah, I think they're wasting their opportunity for making a long, drawn-out version that isn't so bad. Jeff back. Hey, Houston, since we suspended the debt ceiling in 2019, our spending, of course, went berserk. Are we screwed when we resume July 31st? The thing about the debt ceiling, for those who aren't in America, is that the United States, because we like giving tax cuts to really rich people and not making them pay their fair share, we don't operate a reasonable budget ever, and we need debt. We work on debt. We use mostly private equity and Social Security to pay for that debt. And that's where a lot of those bonds get purchased. Some of them are purchased from overseas folks. Maybe a third of them are purchased from overseas folks. But there's this regular weird thing where we have like a total amount of debt that we're allowed to have. And we get close to it and get close to it and get close to it. As we approach it, Congress has to vote on whether we're going to raise that debt ceiling or not. And they always argue. There's threats that go on. People, oh, we're not going to raise it. We're not going to raise it. And then at the last minute, they raise it. And so the debt can keep growing. Because if we hit the debt ceiling and don't pay on any more of that debt, the interest rates, then all of a sudden the credit rating for the United States plummets. And if the credit rating for the United States plummets, everything else plummets with it. Because things like the reverse repo market, the regular repo market, all sorts of mutual funds, pension funds, international investment relies upon U.S. debt being AAA rated. And if U.S. debt isn't AAA rated, then all of a sudden the value of those assets under management for all those different funds, whether they're international, domestic, whatever, drops a significant portion. And that's because the United States isn't paying the interest on that debt. If they're not paying interest on that debt, they're not paying that debt. And we could see a catastrophic collapse of the global economy if we don't raise the debt ceiling on July 31st. Basically, Congress is held hostage by the amount of debt we have. I mean, you can't fight several $1 trillion in wars and give tax cuts to billionaires and trillionaires unless you're going to accrue some debt for the public. And you know, we've got $1 trillion a year military we have to spend on. And so we got to keep generating that debt. We got to keep floating those bonds. And, you know, I wouldn't doubt if the folks who always want to put up a fight about the debt ceiling just cave in and do it by the deadline on July 31st like they always do. It's just like it's like a tradition. They're like, oh, we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, debt's bad. And then the last minute, some banker probably puts a gun to their head and says, raise the debt ceiling. And they go, all right. Then they go through that whole theater all over again. Okay. I think I missed a chat in here. Someone want to get past me? Oh, this is Chris Taylor. Charlie Vids mentioned 3 risk framework filings today that discuss access to clearing agency models. Any insight and impact on trickery? Ooh, I haven't seen his vid today. Let me put that in the list because I need to go. He's got access. He buys subscriptions to a lot of these financial networks that some of them don't even know exist. I'll have to check it out. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll have to see what that is. Maybe I can tweet about it later after I see his vid. Thank you, Chris. And did I miss another one in here? I'm not sure. I get like 3 of them will pop up, and I'll try looking at them. But okay. Well, the mods are doing their job here. I'm missing all the stuff that is apparently mean. Jamie Bauer, with a potential collapse, how do you see the institutions play out? AMC, GME, wouldn't they sell along with their other holdings? I think the institutions would definitely sell if we're seeing a once in a lifetime, once in a generation, once in a ever squeeze. You'll probably have institutions like BlackRock that have their 9 million plus shares, and as they receive their legit shares, they'll probably be selling them and making a boatload of money at the same time. Because why not? Why if your goal is to make a pile of money, would you leave that sucker on the table and not even look at it, so that stock price goes from $300 to $1 million back down to $300 and like while you blinked or something? That'd be poor job on their part. They will definitely be selling, and they'll be competing with the retail market, who's trying to maximize as much as they can out of those shares towards the peak. So they'll definitely be selling their positions in AMC and GME and all these other meme stock funds. Mupulin again. Can shorts be covered using dark pools and payment for order flow without it causing a spike in price? I don't think so. I get asked this a lot, and I don't think that they can well, they might be able to cover, but I don't think they'll be able to close those positions. They might be able to hide them in the dark pools, but in the end, we own the shares and they need our shares. And without those shares, they cannot fully close their positions. What they're doing with the dark pools right now is those payment for order flows. The folks that use Wobble, SoFi, Robinhood, those similar kind of like phone app brokerages that are tied under larger brokerages. You say, I want to buy this stock at $3.45. They go on the dark pool and they probably buy a fake share, most likely at $3.44, and then they keep the penny. And the problem is when the purchase goes through the dark pool and they do that high frequency trading with the payment for order flows on that, it doesn't, none of the prices there represent what was purchased or represent in the market what the price should be. And that whole dark pool was for these big institutions to be like, I want to do a deal. I want to buy 30% of your company. I'll pay this much for it. And they do this deal off to the side so it doesn't affect the share price on the exchange. But it's been abused and is now a way of hiding retail trades from the exchange. And most of what's being traded in the dark pool are synthetics anyway. Most of those aren't real shares. Most of those are naked shorts being pumped up by hedge funds selling them or by market makers just flooding the market with them. And it's hard to cover positions if all you're doing is generating more things that make the hole deeper. So I don't think they can cover using the dark pools. I think all they've done with the dark pools so far is to make things worse for themselves and everyone else. Oh crap! It's 6 o'clock. I have to go. I'm so sorry to keep this one short. I might be able to do one tomorrow evening. Maybe Sunday during the day. Tomorrow night or Sunday during the day I might be able to do one. If not, I'll see everybody Monday. Sorry to keep this one so short tonight, but man, 500 of you showed up. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And I didn't get a chance to like shoot through all these questions everyone have. So sorry. I might be able to read these later, and maybe I can bring them up when I do the next show. Maybe tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy your evening, and I'll talk to you later. Oh, like and subscribe. Always forget to say that part. And tell your friends. Send the links out. Thank you. Have a good night. All right. There we go. Woo!